All right, let's talk about the trout fish in relation to bass fishing. Trout fishing is comparable, so some of the techniques that you would use to catch a bass will also catch a trout, especially those lures that I made that are spoon lures. A spoon lure is basically made to wiggle back and forth, and mine were silver, so they just look like those little shads that we were talking about, really small. I got some maybe up to here, but most of mine were about that big. And you could catch very large fish with those, especially after spawn when they're looking for an easy meal. Those will come into play. I've caught one of my largest fish off one of those right at the bottom of the dam, too, right next to the bottom, which is more of a difficult spot to catch bass. But, anyways, what was I talking about? The trout? Oh, yeah, the trout. Bass eat trout, so I'm sorry. All the world record bass, they're trout eaters, and most of them got big by eating trout. So what we do as bass fishermen is we fish these lures that look like trout, and they are about this big. They can be about that big, but I've seen people catching bass that were like shoulder to knee, like super long bass, like really, really long bass. I'm not even joking. With these lures that look like trout because the bass attack trout. Now, catching a trout is fun. It's more of like a river, creek setting with the fly fishing setup, but the problem in California and in the West Coast, the trout doesn't survive in the lowland reservoirs very long. It's kind of got to be cold. And if it's cold, the fish is more adapted, but when it gets hot, they die. The rivers and stuff, they come back every season. Like they kind of disappear and then they come back. But like in the lowland reservoirs, they die. They have nowhere to go. If they had somewhere deep enough to go down where the water got colder, they could probably survive longer, but what happens to them is they look around and first they don't have any natural forage and they don't even know how to like catch anything because they're not, being fed in a natural way. We're just feeding them corn-fed whatever food. So they actually eat the mud, get sunburnt, and die. And as they're like getting disoriented, the bass just munch them up. So it's not like they're being wasted. They're making the bass grow bigger. So people still fish for trout, but it's more like 1 or 2 days after they planted the trout, and then it gets harder and harder to catch those planted fish, and they don't survive like the bass.